Unity is at the center of every epic battle in India, and brothers on either side. Are we defined by who we are or what we have?
The oldest Greek stories are the epics Iliad and Odyssey.
Right.
And Iliad is the story of the Trojan War, the last year of the Trojan War. And it tells the story of a hero called Achilles, whose participation in battle leads to victory and whose withdrawal leads to defeat. And Odyssey tells the story of another soldier, also from the Trojan War, a Greek warrior called Odysseus, and his return home. So it's the story of two men on a journey. It's a story of its individual characters and what happens to them. They are narrative. Now, around the same time in India, there were two stories, two great epics of India. There's the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And both are not about individuals. They are about families. They are about political intrigues within the family.
Right.
And it tells you how different India is from the Greek narrative, which strongly influences the Western narrative. If you look at the Ramayana, it can be seen as a story of three brothers taking place across three different zones, one can say. So let's draw a table. I have a habit of doing tables to understand. So you have the set of two brothers, brother 1 and brother 2.
Right.
The first set of brothers are in the city of Aodhya. Their father is a king called Dashrath. The brother is Ram, and there's another brother called Bharat. The second set of brother is in a jungle in the city. It is called the kingdom of the monkeys, or Kishkinda. The father is Riksha. The brother is Bali or Vali, and the other brother is Sugriv. And then there is the third set of brothers in the land of Lanka. The father is a rishi called Vaishrav, sometimes known as Pulatsya. The brother is called Ravan.
Okay.
And his brother is called Kuber.
So not Kumbhakarna or Vibhishan?
No. There is another brother called Kuber.
Okay.
Now let's look at the brothers, what happens with relation to property. You have Dashrath one day coming to Ram and saying that I would like you to renounce your claim to the kingdom of Ayodhya and allowing your brother Bharat to be king.
Right.
And Ram says okay without regret or remorse.
Right.
And then Bharat gets the kingdom, and Bharat says, but Ram is the elder brother
And the rightful
and
heir.
the rightful heir. I don't want it. And they say, but for 14 years go to the forest. He says, I'll serve as regent, I'll take care of the kingdom, but I will not sit on the throne. I will place my brother's footwear on the throne and keep it there. And this is almost an ideal relationship. Now, how do you know it's an ideal relationship? Why does Ramayana call it? You see, because the event takes place in the north. Now, not geographical north as we think of it. When they use the word north in literature, they mean the land of the pole star. That which does not move.
Constant.
Which is constant.
Because the pole star is constant.
Because the pole star is constant.
Okay.
So, whenever they use the word north, they mean the land of the pole star.
So it's metaphorical,
It's
not
metaphorical.
geographical.
It's never geographical. It's always metaphorical. And therefore, the land of the pole star represents all that is ideal. So, Shiva's Kailas is in the north, under the pole star.
Okay.
Ram's Ayodhya is in the north. It's under the pole star. It's this perfect space where everything is perfect. And therefore, you're told this is the perfect relationship where brothers can just share kingdom and it's perfectly fine. And then you have far south, so the complete opposite of the land of the pole star, metaphorically, represents land where nothing is stable and static, where there is, everything is changing, and it's a land which of turmoil and fear, is the land of Ravan and Kuber. So Kuber is the king of Yakshas, and he has built this fantastic city called Lanka, made of gold, because Yakshas are the keepers of gold. Now people don't know this, Ravan doesn't build Lanka. He usurps Lanka. He kicks his brother Kuber out of the city and takes over the kingdom. So Lord of Lanka has aggressively acquired what does not belong to him at all. It is not even for his to inherit, because Vaishrav has nothing to do with the kingdom of Lanka. Kuber built it of his own merit, his own capabilities. Right. So there is no father, there's no inheritance issue at all. It's just one man who just decides that I want what my brother has.
And so Ravan takes over his kingdom, a kingdom that is not his.
Not his, and cannot be his because There is no inheritance issue over here at all.
I get that.
And in between you have two brothers called Bali and Sugriv, whose father is the king of this land, and he tells his sons, share Kishkinda. So the two brothers are sharing this kingdom. And there's a misunderstanding. And Bali believes that Sugriv wants him dead and therefore kicks him out. So there's a misunderstanding, and Sugriv is left to fend for himself. And that's when Sugriv meets Ram.
Okay. And at that point, Ram is on his journey to the south. To retrieve his wife.
To retrieve his wife, who has been taken by this usurper, who usurped not only his brother's kingdom, but also another man's wife.
Okay.
So this is the ultimate alpha male. He always takes what others want because he's the dominant male. And Bali is now behaving like the alpha male. He's unwilling to forgive his brother. The unwilling to understand, talk it out with him. Any attempt to do that is met with violence. And so a battle is fought between Bali and Sugriv. Only this time Ram supports Sugriv and kills Bali. So Bali has behaved like an animal and has been killed like an animal, where no rules of civilization have applied. So the entire battle is done without the code of conduct of civilization.
Right.
But after that event, now Sugriv has become the king of the monkeys, so he can behave like a monkey, which means be the alpha male. And this is when Ram intervenes and says, no, you cannot go back to being an animal. Now you have to behave what the code of dharma is, which makes you human, which means you have to first show compassion for the defeated, which means your heir shall not be your son, but the son of your brother Bali, whom you defeated. So Angad. Now that's a very important decision. This is not what happens in the animal kingdom.
Right.
The alpha male will not adopt the progeny of the defeated. This is what Sugriv is about. So you're taking a transformation. While Bali is very much like Ravan, Sugriv is being made to behave like Bharat. So in a way there is a balancing act. This is the middle space.
Okay.
This is the forest where shifts are taking place. While Ravan, look at Ravan, he is educated. He has 10 heads because he's so intelligent, he's so informed, but yet at a fundamental level behaving like a beast, wanting what others have, and therefore the worst, the not ideal. The land of the pole star is the land of wisdom. That's how metaphorically it's explained. And this is the land of ignorance or Maya.
Okay.
So Maya ki nagri. So they'll say Lanka Maya nagri.
Yeah.
So that's how it's a phrase which is trying to say that this is the space of delusion. So when human beings kick the brother out
and take someone else's wife. So
take someone else's wife.
So take what is not rightfully theirs.
Theirs.
Right.
In fact, it goes into the question is what is rightfully yours? And that's where the notion of property comes in.
What is the purpose or the reason for why property is at the heart of all these three disputes? May it be that Ram and Bharat did not really fight, but property was at the heart of Bharat's mother's desire to make her son the king as well.
Absolutely.
Right? So for each one of these disputes, property was at the heart.
Yes.
What was the message in that?
Yeah, we have to understand the notion of property. And to understand the notion of property, we have to look back at evolution a bit.
Okay.
Now, what do we have to look back? You see, there is man on one side and there are animals on the other. Now, animals display territorial behavior.
Right.
They're highly territorial. Why are they territorial? Because if they are not territorial, their survival is at stake. Their survival is at stake. Now, human beings are 99% animals. We are mostly animal, and a small part of us is not animal, which is because of our larger brain. Now, if we are animals mostly, so territorial instinct exists even within us. And so we are also seeking survival. Where does property come in? When does territory become property? You see, the difference between man and animal is that human beings have imagination. We imagine who we are.
Right.
We have a notion of who we are. And this has two components. What we are and what we have. I am Devdutt Pattnaik. I am also what I possess.
Right.
While I may die, this is mortal. What I have is immortal. So in a way, through property, because what I have will outlive me, my name will outlive me, my achievements will outlive me, my memory will outlive me, my property.
Your property will outlive you?
That is the great delusion of man.
Okay.
So in a way, I have something called a self-image, which is comprised of not only who I am, but what I have. So if I have more, I have a bigger image than you do. And therefore, so since I want to expand my self-image, I want more and more property.
But it is also the source of the maximum amount of friction.
Yes. Now, the wise man knows this is delusion. The wise man knows that what you are has nothing to do with what you have. So when you look at the Ramayana, on one hand you have three characters. You have Ram on one side, and then you have Ravan on the other. Ram knows who he is. His character, his personality is not defined by the property or Aodhya.
Which is why he's so easily able to give it up.
He's so easily give it up. And Bharat, on the other hand, also knows who he is. So his self-image is not dependent on his position as king of Aodhya. So he doesn't need the kingdom. The kingdom is something else. There is the difference between what I am and what I have is very clear. The two brothers are the wise brothers. They know who they are.
Okay.
But Ravan is not the wise brother. He believes that who he is measured by what he has. So he wants what his brother has. He wants what Ram has. He wants what other men have. He wants everything what others have. Because he measures himself by what he has, which is 90% or 99% of humanity today. Which is what the scriptures are trying to tell. So long as you value yourself on the basis of what you have, you are on a troublesome path.
Would you apply that in this materialistic world as well?
Yes, I would. You see, we have to ask ourselves, why do we want what we want? There is a survival need. You need food, clothing, shelter, you need a comfortable life, you need to live. Those are survival needs. That is recognized. This is recognized. In fact, in the Ramayana there is a scene in which our sea monster looks at Hanuman and says, I am hungry. So if I eat you now, I have not done any sin because I've eaten you in hunger. But if I eat you in sport, then I've done something wrong.
Or in gluttony.
Or in gluttony.
Right.
Ramayana is asking, what is man's relationship with property? If my self-image, so I'm fighting not for the survival of the self. See, animals are very innocent. Animals are looking at the survival of the self, their physical body, so they fight for it. Human beings are fighting for the self-image, the imagined body, not the physical body.
But isn't it so easy to give up when you have it to begin with? Let's assume for a moment that we wanted to be empathetic towards Ravan. He didn't have it.
Yes.
He wanted it, he desired it. He used the wrong means to acquire it, but desiring it was not incorrect or bad or wrong because he didn't have it. When you have it, it's so easy to take the higher moral ground and say, but I don't want it. I don't need all of this.
Yes.
When you don't have it, that's not a higher moral ground that you want to take.
It's not a question of wanting it or not wanting it. The point is to discover who you are. Find out who you are. In that process, I will acquire wealth, I will lose wealth. Am I the person I am because I have wealth? Or I am the person who I am irrespective of what I possess? Because fortunes will come and go. It is not that if I have a lot, I will be generous. There is no correlation between wealth and generosity. Generosity is who you are, and wealth is what you have. And let's not make that mistake that if I have a lot, I'll be generous. That's corporate social responsibility.
Ouch! That's a double ouch. So I'm curious, right? All the three instances of stories that you've told us are of brothers warring over property, though that may not completely strictly apply to Ram and Bharat because they didn't quite war. But the rift between them, or the reason why Ram had to leave, was property. What is the ideal brotherhood then? Because these are issues that are always going to plague us.
Yes. You see,
so is Ram and Lakshman the ideal brotherhood?
I think the scriptures are not interested in how ideal brothers should behave. It's about who you are. If you are okay, then your relationship with your brother will be okay. Then your relationship with your organization will be okay. Then your relationship, because you will know how to behave in different situations. Because you have figured yourself out. Now, the whole narration therefore focuses on the person who has figured himself out. In fact, that's why you see this very interesting relationship between Ram and Lakshman.
Why do you call it interesting? Because Lakshman followed Ram every step of the way. So to some extent, he was as ideal and brother as Bharat, because Bharat was willing to give up the kingdom or not rule and give up kingship and wait for Ram to return, Lakshman went the step ahead and said, I will follow you around and live the same hardship that you do.
You see, the question is, we celebrate Lakshman. We say, kitna acha bhai hai, such a good brother, loyal brother. But does Ramayana celebrate him?
Doesn't it?
Well, I have my doubts. You see, how does Ram relate to Lakshman? Is a very interesting narrative.
I thought as an older brother, very fond of his younger brother.
Fond, yes, but you see, as if I might say that as an elder brother, his job is to tell Lakshman what is really important. And loyalty is not really important, because where does loyalty come from? Does it come from an animal nature where brothers become territories? Or is it coming from a human or the potential divine nature where we look beyond territoriality, where all human beings are my brothers, not just the one who is biologically connected to me?
So are you saying loyalty was a negative attribute in Lakshman?
Let's listen to stories and figure out this. It's never stated mythology never states things explicitly, but it implies things. Let's look at what happens to Lakshman's and Ram's relationship after the return
to
Ayodhya. And that reveals something very different. You see, after Ram has become king and he's the great king of Ayodhya, the stories change dramatically. And the loyalty of Lakshman is being tested repeatedly based on conditions put by Ram. And you keep wondering, why is Ram testing his loyalty?
For instance?
You see, Ram takes one of the toughest decisions of his kingship when he decides to abandon Sita as his queen. Now, it's a very complex narrative. Who does he tell to convey this message to Sita? He tells Lakshman to convey this message to Sita. He tells Lakshman, you take her to the forest and leave her there and tell her not to come back and not to identify herself as my wife. Why is he giving Lakshman this task? Lakshman has always represented the average human being because he's a passionate man. He talks from his heart. Lakshman is obviously horrified at this brother's decision. The brother still looks calm and composed and says, just do this. And you're seeing Lakshman almost angry with his brother. And this narrative always shows about he's disappointed and angry and his loyalty is being tested. Is this the brother he respects?
Is this the brother he followed into the forest for 14 years?
Is this the great man he followed into the forest? And suddenly saying, my brother is not the great man. Why is he doing this? Later, we are told, when Ram loses the only battle in his life to his children, and Sita then after that goes back under the earth, and the children come back, and the gods come to Ram and say, Ram, it's time for you to die. And Ram says, I have one more task, just one task to complete. He says, what? He says, I'll tell you about it. And he looks at Lakshman and says, I want solitude. I want the room to be shut and I want to stay alone. And Lakshman, like a loyal brother, says, don't worry. If anybody dares enter your chambers, I will guard your chambers. If anybody enters, I will kill them. And Ram says, thank you. And the doors are shut. And the moment the doors are shut, the Rishi Durvasa comes in and tells that I want to meet Ram.
He tells Lakshman that.
He tells Lakshman that. And Lakshman says, sorry, you can't meet him. He wants solitude. And Durvasa is known to be an angry sage. And he looks at Lakshman and says, if you don't let me meet Ram, I will destroy the city of Ayodhya. Now, Lakshman has a dharma sankat. He has to decide whether he has to obey his brother
or allow for the destruction of the city of Aodhya.
And he takes a decision and he opens the door of his brother's chamber and he says, brother, Rishi Durvasa has come to meet you. And Ram is visibly upset and he says, but I told you I want solitude. He says, yes, but I couldn't. Ayodhya was at stake. And then Ram smiles and they turn around and there is no Durvasa there. And Lakshman realizes that there is no Durvasa, it was just an apparition. And he looks at his brother and he asks his brother, what was this? He says, you finally realize what matters more. Ayodhya matters more than me. And so now that you have decided and broken your own, now keep your word. You said that you will kill whoever disturbs my solitude. It's time for you to die. And Lakshman then goes into the forest to give up his life.
But why the punishment of death?
Not the punishment. You gave, who took that vow that I will kill who breaks solitude?
Lakshman himself.
Yes, so he has to keep that word. Raghukula riti sada chali aayi. The word has to be kept. The same word which made Ram leave the city of Ayodhya and go into exile, the same word which forced Ram to give up his wife, suddenly Lakshman is taught the value of the word, which creates civilization, commitment, contract. You give your word, jaban diya hai, you have given your word, keep it.
Isn't that a little too harsh? The apparition was created by Ram to teach his brother also about the fact that you need to prioritize your duty towards the kingdom more than your brother.
The story is not for Lakshmana or for Ram, the story is for us. It is a mythic narrative, a narrative which is trying to tell people what matters more. And this is the story where Lakshmana is being told, loyalty doesn't matter, your word matters. Aodhya matters more. Your wife doesn't matter, your kingdom doesn't matter. What matters more is the people whom you serve as king. They matter the most. In other words, in modern management, it's not the leader doesn't matter, it's the institution, the organization that he builds matters more.
How interesting, because still now Lakshman was always held up as the ideal brother. And you're telling me that Ram in fact taught him a lesson saying that loyalty to your brother cannot be a priority.
What is important is dharma.
But we value loyalty so much.
Why do we value loyalty? Because when I say I have loyal followers, I'm still thinking of what I have, not what I am.
So it's still territorial.
It's still territorial, it's still property. It's just different type of property. It is not physical property as in bank balance. This is property of relationships. So I have brothers, I have followers, mere paas hai vote banks, these are properties. It tells more about what we have, it tells us nothing about what we are.